started. Formally, I'm Corbin Hazlett.
Jerry Coleman.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Meet you.
John Kelly.
Meet you.
And I guess we'll just start off and ask you a couple questions about what it was like growing up here and a few things about the town. So, when and where were you born?
I was born in St. Charles in 1953.
Were you born at home?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And what part of St. Charles did you live in?
Right in the center of town.
Okay. Was it near any kind of other businesses or?
In the day, it was probably the biggest community there was around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you live right in the heart of it.
Yes.
How about that? Did you live just in a family-owned home or
We rented.
rented? Okay. Was it multiple families in the home? Or?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Like kind of like a duplex.
Right.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool.
I don't think we called it a duplex.
Yeah, well.
It was just a big building.
Right.
Right.
That's neat. That's neat. Well, what are some of your early memories of living in St. Charles?
Just a great place to be.
Yeah.
Everybody, it was just one big playground.
Really?
Yes,
I mean,
yes. We had mountains, creeks, whatever it took.
That's neat.
Yeah, we were a really tight community. We played ball. There wasn't a whole lot to do. We just had to invent our own places to play and what to do.
That's neat. Now, was there a ball league, or did y'all just kind of play in the backyard for fun?
We played wherever they would, but we had a good ball field. Play anything, baseball, basketball, whatever it took. But in the day, St. Charles was probably the hub of kind of minor league baseball.
Really?
Right.
For this part of Virginia? Or?
Oh yeah, they traveled to Harlan and places like that, but it was just I never did get to watch them, but probably in the mid '50s, early '60s, there was some great teams coming out of here.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually had a couple of pros that made it to the big leagues from here.
That's neat. That's neat. Now, when you say that St. Charles was a great community, I know a lot of people, when they kind of say St. Charles, they're also referring to the other little communities around. Was it more almost sectional as to if someone was from Bonnie Blue, then they weren't necessarily seen as being from St. Charles? Or?
No, we were all St. Charles because when I was growing up, this was the scope in the early '40s, and each community, because nobody drove. Monarch would have a school, Bonnie Blue would have a school, every little community, because there wasn't no school buses. But now, when I was growing up, we had a bus that hauled everybody into St. Charles High School.
Okay. That's neat. So how long did you live in St. Charles?
I got married early, but I lived here for 18 years, and then I moved away to Detroit for a year and a half, got homesick, and came right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I got married, and then I moved out. So, about 18 years.
How about that? Well, you wanna?
Whenever you were living here, what did your parents do for a living that you're?
Well, my dad and mom were divorced, so they moved. My dad lived in Ohio. Really, if you didn't work in the mines, or if you didn't own a little store or something, that was pretty much it. There was no farming, no anything. It was coal mining, or that was it.
Did you have any older brothers and sisters, or?
I had two older sisters and a younger sister.
What did your mama do?
She's a homemaker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
kept on. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, like I say, the women didn't have much of an opportunity. They were either school teachers or something like that, but it's not like it is today. There was really no cars. My mother worked in the drugstore here for a little while, but that was basically it. You didn't have a whole lot. And in the day, very few women worked. It was just more or less the man made the living. And, there were some. They were school teachers and shopkeepers and stuff, but most of the women were homemakers.
You said you were born at home. Now,
Right.
was there a doctor there?
I guess a midwife is what you call it. Yeah. She delivered me. Miss Kaufman. She was also the cook at the school too. She delivered me. She was my godmother. Yes.
What kind of stores were in St. Charles?
Well, but they were a lot of small shops. Mostly, little convenience stores, what we call them today, but they were just all lined up. And actually, we're right now in a hardware store. This used to be a hardware right here. We had a couple of hardware stores, and I don't remember them, but they said we had a Kroger's, and our community grocery store was called the Homeland Market. It was owned locally by Clyde Poe and his family. They ran it for years, and as you can see, the way everything has declined down. The biggest thing about St. Charles was they catered to the coal miner. So everything, there was a community bathhouse. This is where you came behind us in the alley here. There was a little place built. Most houses didn't have showers, and so they had a community shower. When they got off work, they walked down here to take their shower to go home. And we had a lot of beer joints.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and pool rooms. It was that kind of community. They catered to the coal mine. That's what we done.
Now, did folks from other communities come to St. Charles for those purposes? Or?
St. Charles was a booming place. It was, when you came to Lee County, you more or less came to St. Charles. That's where everything was going on at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big growing place that was run by the coal mines. And once they started going down, the mines, so did St. Charles. And then in later years, a lot of people had cars, so they quit living in St. Charles. They would drive to other places and to live, and then they'd work in St. Charles. So that was basically what it was. Once the mines went down, the town went down.
Now, when would you say that that started happening?
Well, when I was growing up, it was in the 60s, and probably when I was 10, 12 years old, it was still a booming place. It was still quite a bit going on. There was a lot of people in town, whether they were living here at the time or not, but they would come here, and like I say, in the early parts, there was more like buses came to St. Charles, and they would bus people up here to have a good Saturday night, and then they would go home. But when I was, a lot of people were moving out in the early 70s. It was starting to go down pretty quick then in the 70s. But in the 50s and 60s, I can remember the streets were busy, very busy, and a lot of action out on the streets. There was a lot went on. Yeah, too many people in too small a town. So it kind of you bumping into people and a little drinking, and
tensions
yeah,
arose.
a lot of tensions. Yeah,
That's it. Huh.
but the baseball, that was the life. In the winter, it was a little less hectic. But in the summer, a lot of baseball games going on, and it was just a thriving place. A lot of shops.
What kinds of churches was here? Was there a certain?
Well, of course, we had the Christian church that was here, the Church of God, and the Baptist church that was right down the road here. That was the two main ones that I can remember in town. We had a little, and actually I don't even know what denomination it was, but I can remember the preacher that preached there, and his name was Preacher Fisher. He had one leg, and he kind of like I don't know how you would explain it. He had a crutch on his leg. I can remember him just like it was, and that's how he got around. But and then out of town, in Monarch had a little Baptist church, Bonnie Blue. Most of it was Baptist and some Christian, Church of God's. And then right outside of town in Stone Creek, they had the Holiness. I remember that one being down in Stone Creek, but I don't remember a Holiness Church in St. Charles. But we had several churches right here locally. They was in a 1 mile radius. I'd say we had 4 or 5 churches right there at one time.
Now, I believe you had mentioned a story about some traveling preachers that would come through and had loudspeakers. Could you tell us that story and some of that?
Exactly, almost directly behind us on the mountain here was a man that lived up on the hill, and he had loudspeakers. And on Sundays, even though I don't know if he was, an ordained minister or whatever, but he would preach from like noon till 5 o'clock of the evening. Yeah, he would just, and it would reverberate all over these hills right here. You could hear a preacher going all day. And then we had his name was Hardin Stapleton, would sit up right here in the middle of town, and he had them on his car. 2 big, gigantic loudspeakers, and he would preach. So we had 2 preachers going at one time, and they were loud. You could definitely hear the preachers. But now they set up every Saturday and Sunday. Well, I think Mr. Mullins that lived up on the hill here, he only done it on Sunday, but Hardin Stapleton done it on Saturday and Sunday. And then we had the preacher from the Church of God here right directly behind us. He would set up on Saturday to supplement his income, because I'm sure that they didn't make a whole lot of money. He would sit up under the sycamore and have shaved ice that he would do by hand. He would shave it by hand, and then he had his little, I guess, Kool-Aid or whatever that he poured in it. That was one of the big things for the kids. We'd definitely hit there Saturday morning. We were ready for our nickel ice shaved, whatever that shaved ice is. Yeah, that was one of the things that we done. Yeah, and it was that was a treat for us, because, like I say, nobody had cars, and it was St. Charles. Every once in a while we'd make the trip to Pennington, but all in all, we lived here in town, and that's where we stayed, right here.
Was there a bowling alley or a theater or dance hall or anything in town?
Well, the streets were pretty much the dance hall. Yeah, it was. Everybody seemed to have a good time, but I can remember going to the theater, and it was here in town, and we had some in the day. Way before your all's time, but the westerns were the big thing. That's all you seen was westerns. And we had some of the bigger stars would come to St. Charles for, I guess grand openings or whatever, and they would come to the theater, and it was, I can barely remember anything about the theater, but I do remember going to it. But like I say, it was westerns, and I think my mom, she called Johnny Mac Brown, which was a big time star. I think he made it here in a few more. Lash LaRue, way before your all's time, but they were big time stars, so they came here at that time. Yeah,
that's really neat.
Do you remember any strikes or anything?
Yes. We had some of the great old men that you probably, if they made a movie, they would be top name stars. They were Union. We had Union men here, and they would do whatever it took to keep it Union. They stopped trains. They stopped all. I can remember right here exactly where we're sitting. There was a restaurant across the road, and the coal trucks would try to come through, and even the people would park their cars in the middle of the street. The coal trucks didn't make it through. And we've had, they would sit up under the sycamore. That's where all the meetings and everything took place. And when they went down to the sycamore tree, they would set up picket lines there, and they would stop people from going, because we had mines really, really close. We had one right across the railroad tracks there that really it blew up and took 4 young people's lives right there. But that's where they would try to cross picket lines and stuff. But the old men were tough old birds. They didn't let it happen back then.
Now, when did that explosion happen?
7/7 of 1977.
Really?
So that would have been July the 7th of 1977. Yeah, it blew up, and they were, like I say, four young guys, early 30s, that got that got blew up with it. And, yeah, it took several of my friends growing up. They met a fate like that, you know, because the mines were. It was not as safe as they are now, and the coal owners, they just more or less, you go in, you get the coal at whatever cost, and it things are a lot safer now. The last several years that I worked, it was more safety than anything. You get to be safe before you get the coal out, but in the day it was more get the coal out, and that was it. Yeah, don't worry about everything else.
Now, could you tell us a little bit about your time working in the mines?
I originally started in Kentucky, and I stayed there for about a year and a half, and then I got lucky, and they opened Powell Mountain Coal Company up, and I was actually they were three of us started at the same time, and I was one of the three, and honestly, it was I had a good time. It was a lot easier than the first year and a half I worked when I started in Kentucky, because the laws were changing, and Powell Mountain really took care of me. I mean, and well, they took care of all of us. They were a good bunch to work for, and it was I worked for them for about 27 or 28 years, somewhere in there, and it was yeah, we did have some injuries and stuff, but for the day it was good work. It really was. And when they shut down here about 7 or 8 years ago, it really affected this community even more, because that was one of the last. We still got a couple of mines up here, but it was. I've heard all the stories back, you know, in the 30s and 40s. These old men, they broke their backs. And they were better to us, and the law stepped in and made everything a whole lot easier for the working man. It was still hard work, and it's still dangerous, but it wasn't as bad. These old men, they had the ponies, and we had automation, and yeah, it was a lot easier, a lot safer. Everything was much better when I worked at it. The old men, I really feel for them, because they really put in some hard labor. They really did. Low coal. I worked in high coal. Yeah. I mean, not all the time, but most of the time I worked in high coal. And it just, it was more to me like it was, I don't know, it was just not easy, but it was better than what they used to have. So, yeah, everything was good for me. Mm-hmm.
Now, what year did you start, and what year did you end in the mine?
I worked, the best I can remember, it was 1980, and that's when I started, and then I ended in 2007. Now, I mean, it was somewhere in our 27, 28 years is about what I put in. So, yeah, it was, like I say, when I first started, it was a little smaller coal, and you could tell that we called them dog holes, because in the day, that's about what it was. You went in, and it was rough. They opened up. The regulations wasn't as strict. So you seen a coal seam, somebody would go in and open it up, and they wasn't a whole lot of government regulations. So they just they did things pretty much the way they wanted to do it, and that's about where I started at. It was pretty rough. And then, like I say, I got lucky. A friend of mine was opening this up, you know, or he was going to run it for Powell Mountain Coal Company. So they hired me, and I was pretty tickled. This is where I grew up, and I was here. So my family was still here, and so it made it a lot better for me instead of driving to Kentucky every day. So I was in good shape, believe me. Yeah.
Now, I know you had mentioned one time something about I guess the mining had affected a hillside and caused some flooding. Can you tell us maybe how some of the mining and some of the mines may have affected, you know, structurally some of the area?
If it came a good downpour, it would pretty much, the creeks would overflow here. And in 77, I believe that was our last big flood. And I'm not going to blame it all on the coal mines or the stripping or whatever, but because it had rained quite a bit. But it was just like it was if you got a downpour, you better look out because the water was coming. And I've seen it where right here where we're sitting, it would probably be knee deep with water. And yeah, it was it took out bridges. Just if it rained hard, you were going to get a flood. Nobody came in and stepped up and said, you know, we need to clean these creeks out or widen them or, you know, clean the where it'd be a little bit deeper. And if the sediment ponds, I'm sure weren't as structurally sound as they are now, and it would just break them, and you'd see a wall of water coming. And I've seen it come down through Bonnie Blue, and it hadn't really rained that hard, and it'd be a foot deep in the road coming down through there. You could just see it coming. And it was something out of a sci-fi movie, you know, all of a sudden you got water coming. But one time for Powell Mountain, we actually wiped out a little community over in Kentucky because I guess it's safe to say that we probably got a little bit deeper into the mines. You're supposed to leave a barrier block before you can, in case of something like that, but the mines filled up with water, deserted mines that we had left, and when it broke loose, I actually went and seen it, and it was just destruction. It took out all the trees, everything on the backside of, I guess it was Bonnie Blue at that time. It just took out the whole wide, probably a 20-foot path down that mountain that just looked like a dozer had been there. And it took out a little community in Kentucky. Luckily for everybody, nobody got killed. But I could see if it did, because it had to be a real destruction right there. Because, like I say, when I seen it, it was just a path of water, like a creek. It just went through there. So it was a little bit of, I'm going to say, carelessness on our part, and just lucky that nobody got hurt or killed.
What was the name of that community in Kentucky? Remember?
Honestly, the only thing I can remember was maybe, I know it had to be close to Edwards, Kentucky, but Redbud sticks to my mind. That's the only thing I can just, seems like Redbud, Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I couldn't honestly tell you what it was. I just know that it wiped out, they said, some of the witnesses said that it looked like a 10-foot wall of water coming at them. So, you know, it wiped out some trailers and some houses, and took some of the kids' bicycles and stuff like that with them. But just like I say, it's just lucky nobody was out, because I don't know how anybody could have survived that if it had been up close to the headwaters, because it had to be trees and everything stuck with it, because it just wiped it out. But now that's the best that I can remember on it. It's been probably 20 years ago when that happened.
Oh, so late 80s, or do you know what
Yeah,
the
let's
date was?
say, yeah, probably the late 80s, maybe early 90s. Yeah.
Do you have any other stories or anything that you'd like to tell us or share with us?
Well, St. Charles has got the reputation that we were a rough, I'm not going to say ignorant, but we were just a little bit on the borderline, and it's still that people wants to think that we're just not the same as them. We were a little bit rough, or they were. I wasn't rough, but I said we protected what was, you know, up in here, and we were smaller, but now anybody got to know us, they think we're better than average now. We're just a tight-knit community. We just, you know, when we had to go play, especially in the later years, our school was probably half the size of everybody else, but we had to play. It was like, there wasn't no classifications back then, you know. You were a high school team, you played whoever you played, and we were better than, I mean, once again, not me. I wasn't no athlete, but I was a supporter of we were just, but when they came to St. Charles, they know that it was kind of rough. It was a rough community. I mean, when you come up here, you know, you got along with us or you come up here to fight, I guess. I don't want to say it that, but it was a rough place. You came up here, you know you were in a, we had a policeman that worked in the mines, so he was only part-time. You know, he was just coming in and on a Saturday night he had his hands full. Because it was.
So there's a lot of balance. There's a lot of balance in things.
Absolutely, yes. And well, I think that first time we discussed, I was right there when it happened, when they shot the cop off the side of the mountain up there, and he had his hands full. You can only imagine all the miners coming in, because at that one policeman, and then every once in a while they'd send the county deputy up. But it was more than he could handle by himself. So, you know, he had to protect himself, and the laws weren't the same as what they are now. You got him to jail the best way you know how, and he done it. I mean, I'm never going to say nothing bad about him being that way, but he had more than he could handle here in town. You can only imagine 4 or 5 fights a night, and him by himself. And it might be a gang fight, not gangs like we say now. I mean, it just might be 2 guys that, you know, didn't see eye to eye at work that day, and they would just do whatever it took out here on the street. I was here when several of the people here were killed, and even though it didn't kill him when he got shot, it permanently he was through. It pretty much ruined him. But yeah, they was a lot of violence. They settled it. We had the reputation we were Dodge City, and when you came to town, you know what was there. I mean, and he handled it the best way that he knowed how. But they never did find out who shot him or anything. It was just one of those. They shot at him one day, and they missed him, and then the next week they got him. And I guess all along he knew it was coming sooner or later, because he had killed people, and I guess families taking care of families, they just decided that they was going to end it. Even though they didn't kill him, they pretty much burned him. That was the end of anything for him, because I know it crippled him up really bad.
What year would that have happened?
I see, it was I think I was still in high school, so it was 1970, I think, when that happened. I think I was a junior in high school. No, actually it was 71. That's when it happened, and it happened right at the community in the hub of St. Louis, at the Sycamore Tree. That's where it happened, because that's where all the old retirees, they met there. They had a checkerboard. Everybody met under the sycamore to see what had happened the night before or whatever, and he was there, and when they shot the first time, they shot like 5 times. I was working in a little upholstery shop across the street, and bullets ricocheting everywhere, coming through the windows on us, and he had dove into the creek, and like I say, he come out and he said, they missed me that time, and then the next week they shot him. So, and that's right in this area right here, there was a man got killed over a fiddle, and he didn't want to turn loose of his fiddle, and another guy wanted it, so he shot him. And I said, that was just a lot of silliness, but I guess that's the way that you finished it. It was like the movie The Quicker the Dead. You either was quick, or you got out of there, or you got shot. So to make another little, at 9 o'clock on any night, there was a siren that the policeman, he rang at 9 o'clock. 16 and under need not be anywhere close, because that's when you better be home. Luckily for me, I only had to run about 50 yards and I was home, but you ran, because he did not allow it. It was over. That was the end of when he spoke, you listened, and especially if you was a kid, because he got them off the street. Yeah, but it was. We never thought of it as being that rough, because we grew up in it. But looking back, it was a pretty rough place. Yeah, it was a fun place, but when to go home.
Yes.
And that's when you need to go home, when the siren went off. And that was every night. So then the older people, they could stay out, but we had to go.
Right.
I heard you talking about, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I heard you talking about like people, like several people were being killed, like or shot at, the sheriffs and stuff like that. So, how about mine deaths? Do you know of any people that were actually killed inside the mine?
Oh yes, I know.
Like that?
I have Powell Mountain where I work. We actually have one kid he got killed. That was the only death we had. But we had several, really paralyzed, busted up really bad and everything. But we only had the one death. But yes, I know a whole lot of my friends were killed in the mines. Yes, in the early '70s, late '60s, early '70s. Actually, one of our hosts here today, her brother and I were really good friends. We went to the same mines together. It was they were three of us. Him and my best friend and me went to Kentucky. We were going to go in the mines. We were 19 years old and we thought it was time to get started. Well, I chickened out because it looked like it was about 2 foot high and it looked like a big house fan for a ventilation fan. And I told him, I said, I'm not going in there. My best friend said he wasn't going. Well, my other friend, he went in and I'd say within a year he was dead. He got killed. So that was and then the 4 kids that got, I say kids, they were in their early 30s, but that's way too young to be, dead. And they got blew up here within about a mile from here, right outside of town. They said it was a cigarette lighter that done it, and I ain't said the regulations back then wasn't as bad. It was illegal. Everybody knew it was illegal. But if nobody's there to enforce it, and you're a 2-pack a day smoker, that's not going to deter you from going in. And because when I went in, my first week, they took me back in some old works. That's where you'd work that out, and they just deserted it for the time being. And I was terrified because they wasn't nobody any more scared to go in the mines than me. And I didn't want to do it, but I had a family. So when I went back in there, they told me one pulled out his lighter. And the other one said, surely you're not going to smoke here. And I know that was the end of my time right then. He flicked his big, and I thought, well, that's the end. But luckily, nothing happened, but there was no wire back there, no wire stirring, and whatever it took. But that's what they said happened up here. I don't know that. Only they know that. But they did say that it was a smoking.
And it was the time that the union was here, right?
Yes.
So basically, was there any the boss was there to enforce it, or did they just?
Well, in the mines, you can be moved. You can be within 10 foot of somebody, and you'll never know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they're anywhere from just going around the block, you could do it right there. I'm sure that the boss and everything is there, but like I say, somebody that smokes. I don't smoke, but I do know that addictions, and when they want a cigarette, they pretty much gonna do. And honestly, I can tell you this, because who's going to do anything about it? They smoke where I work last. Not many, but I have seen, remnants of things that's laying there that, somebody smoked here, recently. So it would be so hard to enforce. Now, once they found it, that was the big. Once they found it, you're caught, you're gone. But it would be so hard to catch somebody.
Like by federal definition, a disaster isn't considered a disaster until there's 5 people that's been killed within it. But in my opinion, when you have one death, that's a disaster for the family and their friends.
Yeah.
So just to imagine 4.
Right. Right.
You look at the people that it's affected and stuff.
Exactly.
Like your best friend, I know that had to affect you.
Right, yes, it
And
did.
his family.
Right.
And so, I guess you would agree with that.
Exactly. If there was one kid where I worked last, he got crippled. He was I guess, lifeless from the neck down. He was probably 21, and I'm sure he's still alive. I've not heard from him, or heard about him, because I've never actually met the kid. He lived in Kentucky, but he's probably close to 60 years old now, and you can only imagine laying out with all of them. One of my best friends, he was I don't know, a walking time bomb or whatever, because great guy, but he would get injured every time he moved. I mean, he had an eye put out. He was just not clumsy, but things just happened to him. And then one day he went home and he jumped off a trampoline and he broke his neck. And that was and he died recently here. But just a great guy that to me, that's a tragedy. I mean, my goodness, this guy was a farmer. He was everything. So I said, 4 people, and all of them had, well, I'm going to say one didn't have kids, but other than that, 4. He left all of his kids, his wife, and right now, it was better in the 70s than what it was in the 40s and 50s, but you're a wife or a mother, you lose your breadwinner. It wasn't easy. It's not like that they were going to come in and, I know in the early days, if a man got hurt at work, the wife and whatever, there was nothing for her. There was no federal assistance. It was community would help her, but for how long? We've all went through that. They'll help you, rah, we'll help you come in here and we'll help you for a week. And then after that week, the next week, she's got to start fending for herself, and it's kind of rough. And that was with all 4 of them were married, and at least 3 of them had kids. So you got that many.
And so even with the union being here, you would think they would be able to get assistance.
I'm sure in the 70s they probably did, because like I said, it was 1977 when this one happened, and I'm sure that the union helped out some, but it's, you're taking the bread off the table. At that time, they were probably making $5 or $6 an hour. So
what I've read though is that they would try to fight to get what they're supposed to have after their husbands were killed and stuff, but usually they come up empty.
Right, exactly, and they suffer.
The mining companies would find some way to be consistent.
Exactly. Well, it was a lot different back then. A lot of it was family-owned coal mines. The man that owned the mines where it happened, great guy. He owned the grocery store here in town. And one of the best men. And I would say that they probably got took better care of than anybody because of that man. He was church-going Christian man but I still think that they suffered a whole lot. My friend that got killed, he wasn't married. We were 19, 20 years old, so he wasn't married. But he still had sisters and a dad, and they suffered. And it's like a car wreck. You go out, you're dead. But it just seemed like it was something about coal mining. That's where you had to make your living. That's pretty much what we had to do. I left here because of it. I mean, really, I went to Detroit, and just because I was too scared to go in the mines. And I'd done heard too many stories that I didn't want. But got homesick, come back here, and it was coal mining, or I tried every little grocery store and everything. You couldn't make ends meet, and I wanted to make money, so that's what I went. And it was good to me, but a lot of people suffered.
And it's still a lot like that today.
Yes, because it is dangerous. I mean, regardless of government stepping in or anything, that government don't hold that rock up. If it decides to come down, it's coming down. Yes, or explosion.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Are there any other stories or remarks you'd like to make before we close out? Anything else you want?
Like I say, my mom, she always said that we grew up poor, but I wouldn't have had it no other way. This was home, and that's what I want. I'm from St. Charles. That's where I'm from.
Okay. My name is Evan Couch, and we're just interviewing different folks from St. Charles and learning about the town. It used to be a pretty booming town, and they're just telling us about the coal mines and you know, just what life was like before it became, you know, not so populated and how it is today. And it's been pretty interesting so far.
I'm Connie Little, and this is for an Appalachian Studies class, local history. And it's been interesting for me because I'm from this area, I'm from Dickinson County, and these stories feel like the stories I've heard all my life from home. And I just think it's interesting to see the sense of community here that I've seen within my own community. So, yeah, that's it.
My name is Corbin Hazlett, and I'm here with the interviews at St. Charles on the 22nd of March. And I think it's a really great experience. We've had some folks turn out that know a whole lot about the history of the town and brought in some really neat pictures and papers and artifacts. Personally, I'm a musician, and one guy I interviewed told a little story where apparently there was these two fellas at a beer joint, and one of them had a fiddle, and the guy was playing fiddle. Another guy walked up, apparently wanted to play the fiddle, but the guy wouldn't turn it over, and apparently it came to the point where the one who wanted it shot the guy over the fiddle. So I guess that's a lesson to learn. Next time I'm in a bar playing fiddle and somebody wants the fiddle, I'll hand it over. But it's really neat. It's been a great experience, and I hope it keeps on going.
You might have heard your grandparents talk or someone in your family. Did a lot of the families up there have gardens? Were they self-sufficient?
Yes. And matter of fact, that was one of my memories was the garden spots weren't near the house. I remember there was a well-beaten path around through the woods from the house to a large area that was cleared for a garden spot.
So was it kind of a community garden? A little bit, or?
I'm assuming that each family that had their own little spot, don't know that it was supplied by the company.
Right, okay.
I'm assuming that it was up to each family to have their garden spots plowed and cultivated, tilled for themselves.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, going back to the script, you know, we were talking about the medical doctors earlier and how they were supplied by the company. What did they pay them with?
I'm not sure about that. That's
Okay.
a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know if the company paid them or whether or not it was up to the employee to pay them.
Okay.
I do know it was interesting that looking through the archives that we had a vault that contained a lot of old records and old documents and maps that had been passed down from the old company. You talk about accidents and injuries. I found a file where they had reported back. They did monthly reports on accidents and fatalities. And it was a regular occurrence to have a fatality or multiple fatalities company-wide each week. And that was during the 30s and 40s, particularly during wartime when the biggest boom was on. But now we're talking a company that would have had multiple mines, not only in this area but on the back side of the mountain in Kentucky. So you had thousands of men working and not near the safety and mining practices.
Right.
Because you mine different ways of mining. You what was called shooting on solid, and then you had a mechanized way of mining where you had a machine that would cut a slot out of the coal seam on the bottom, and then you would drill and shoot it. And course, roof control, holding up the roof was another danger. So they had multiple injuries and accidents every week. So it was just astounding to me I knew that they would have had accidents and injuries, but to find out that they were reporting, multiple fatalities each month was just astounding. And it was acceptable.
Right.
They just considered that part of doing business.
Going back to with the company, this right here, you were talking about your grandfather kind of climbed the hierarchy, I guess. He became a supervisor. Do you remember tensions between the company and the higher ups and the people,
For him and
the
his,
miners?
I know that in talking to my uncle about him, he was well liked, and that was one of the reasons that he made a good supervisor.
Right.
Is, as they say, it's easier to pull a rope than to push it. If you're well respected and your men like you, they'll work for you, and that was his attitude. And that's what made him a good boss, and that's why he was when you say boss, that's sometimes a bad word. A leader's, if you're a good leader, then that's what makes you a good one. And if you go from one mine to another mine, and your men will work for you. You can ask any one of these guys that's been interviewed that has worked underground that the best boss is the one that'll get in there and get dirty with you.
Right.
They don't have to be a boss. They're just one of you.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
what made him a good supervisor.
Do you think he might have had any problem with the unions?
Everybody back then, the union was a good thing.
Okay.
That when miners didn't have the union, that was why they were being paid with script, and they didn't have good wages, and that's why people were you had multiple deaths and accidents, and that's what brought the union about. The companies were hiring paid thugs, and the union was a good thing in the beginning. And then we reached a time in history where unions weren't needed because every man had the same rights and protection and in the job place. So that's why the unions have disappeared. They priced themselves out of the job market. And I don't ever see the unions coming back unless the pendulum swings so far back to the other side.
Yeah.
So
Do you remember a lot of talk of violence before the unions? Like you just said, there were hired thugs. What?
no, because we're talking when you're talking that I wasn't born then. The beginnings of the unions. You're talking back in early days. So
Right. Okay. What else do we?
I wanted to ask, going back to your lightning story, was there any any kind of, I don't want to say tension, but I know there wasn't a lot of African Americans.
you will be surprised. Look
Okay.
at some of the old pictures.
There
There was a considerable amount of blacks in this area,
Right.
but there were black schools for them,
There were.
and there were black camps. I know that, but you don't hear it talked about.
You don't.
You won't see anybody here talking about the black history of St. Charles.
Except for you.
Exactly. But you look in those pictures, count the number of black miners.
Okay. We'll go back.
And you really we need to do that today.
We will.
Let's pull out the hard copies and let's count the number of black miners in those pictures. Now you'll see them standing in the back.
Okay.
So as far as the mines, they
had
went
black
in together.
cemeteries, they had black churches, they had black schools,
So
they had a black. Apparently there must have been black camps, but I don't hear anybody talking about it. I don't know where they were, but I know that at Powell Mountain we had to relocate a black cemetery when we expanded and lengthened the railroad cut. We had to relocate a black cemetery.
As far as, but did they work together with
Yes.
the lots inside the mine?
Yes.
But everything else was separate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because we had kind of checked out some census records, and we did know that there were quite a few up in there, but we didn't know, trying to piece everything together. So it's interesting, very interesting. Okay. What else?
Well,
You know, I lived in Jonesville. We didn't have any blacks in my school at all.
Right.
Now Pennington had a few, but I know they had a black school,
Right.
and they had a few blacks in their high school. But I'm talking 5 or 6. Okay.
Right.
But now I know back in the 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s and 50s up here there had to be a lot for that many miners to show up in those pictures.
Right.
right.
Do you remember playing with, like when you were a kid? Were there still
There wasn't
a lot
any
of
in our
black
town.
kids? Okay, there weren't.
None.
And when you were very small when you guys lived with your
Oh,
grandparents.
I'm
so-
talking 3
Three, okay.
years old.
Right.
But I don't know how I had such vivid memories of being up here. I remember my grandmother telling my grandfather we were coming to town, and he also ran a pool hall here in town, and she told him not to take me to that dirty, nasty pool hall when we went to town, and we come back home. And she said and he made me promise not to tell her we'd been to the pool hall. And we come back home, and he said, "So where'd y'all go?" And I said, "We went down there where we knocked them balls." Got him in trouble, you know.
So what kinds of things went on at the pool hall?
Oh, just dirty language and shooting pool, and I'm drinking.
Right.
This was a very rough place.
Right.
I noticed that this week on Facebook there was a guy who had went to the Kingsport Times News and pulled a lot of old articles regarding St. Charles. And I noticed a lot of the articles involved shootings and stabbings, and I had thought about that before coming up here, and I remember thinking about how rough the place was back then. So there had to be a lot of illegal alcohol here,
Oh yeah.
and not a lot of things to do. But one thing I did notice was 2 preachers were bringing a lawsuit against the theater owner for showing movies on Sunday. And so it was coming to court, but the protest was during wartime, and the miners were having to work extra during wartime
Right.
to World War II, and they couldn't see movies during the week, and they were trying to get it passed that the movie theater could show movies on Sunday,
Right.
at least during wartime.
To accommodate.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was against the law for that theater to be open on Sunday and show movies on Sunday here. And those 2 pastors up here, 2 preachers, were suing that theater owner up here for showing movies on Sunday.
As far as the churches, do you know, was it like one set denomination? Do you know what denominations they were?
There were lots of different ones, and there is the picture of the one I had here. Apparently it was started from. There's a big history of it from a pastor, I think, that came from Kingsport. And it grew and blossomed, and they had a big revival where hundreds were saved in one revival, and they had the Lee County Historical Society had a big write-up about it. And that might be something you could get that document that has a lot of history about it. It was a very in-depth report from, I think it mentions the pastor that's on that postcard that started the church, and has the report about it and gives you numbers and information about that church. It's really remarkable, the kind of numbers that was mentioned about that. And I was shocked. So it would give you the kind of information you're looking. Lots of, if you notice, there's lots of churches, and there was churches for every camp. Lots of denominations, probably mostly Methodist, Baptist, that sort of. There was snake handling in the whole 9 yards. So
A little bit of everything.
you asked for it. So.
All right. What was the role of women in the coal cams?
Raising the kids, because they were big families.
Okay.
And that was part of it. Was Daddy went to work and Mama had 6 kids or 8 kids, so there was all she could do was stay home and wash clothes and take care of the kids, because she was. A lot of families didn't have cars. I mean, it was all she could do. She may have been in the garden. She may have been. Families had chickens. If they were lucky, they had a milk cow. And if they were really lucky, they might have had a hog in the backyard. So, it was to take care of the family and raise the family and sew a few clothes, and maybe take in some laundry to help some. So that's what Mom did.
Do you know if there were any civic organizations for women, or if there was anything that they kind of got
church
together
on
for?
Sunday enough. If she did something, I'm sure that's what it was.
Okay. Let's see. We've pretty much.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories that we have to hear about, maybe, that we haven't touched on?
For St. Charles, it was just remarkable to think back. I would have liked to have the opportunity to see it, go back in time and see it when it was such a boom. They talk about just being a metropolis, but yet there were stabbings every Saturday night, so it wasn't a happy place, and people were pinching every penny. It wasn't like people were rich, because they were living in a company house. They were trying to make ends meet. Daddy was getting up and he was working 6 days a week. He was getting black lung. He was wondering if he was going to make it out. It's feast or famine, because they were either working you 7 days a week, or you were wondering if you had will you go check a board to see if you had work the next day, because that's the way coal was. You took what they had you to work. If you looked at the working conditions, it was 36 inches of coal. You was on your knees. You was humped over. nobody, you had no benefits. Everybody knows that the person making the money was the ones that were selling you your kerosene and your flour and your sugar and your meal. You know, it's that mentality. If you've ever watched Coal Miner's Daughter, you know, turn that radio off. We can't afford to buy no new batteries. You bought a pair of shoes once a year, you know, and that's the kind of life it was. Now, you know, later on it got better. You got any pliers? For me, my motivation for coming up here was I have the fond memories, and they're my memories, and I had a better life. I had two tie-ins. My father's father worked and laid brick, and I remember coming up here as a child when the high school burnt. I remember coming and going into the hardware store up here and seeing the radio flyers hanging on the shelves, sitting on the shelves around the wall, and wishing, gee, look at that big red wagon. I'd like to have one of those. But then coming up here on a Sunday and seeing that building burned. Then, you know, coming up here and seeing the high school in ashes, or I remember coming up and visiting my grandparents up at Bonnie Blue, driving by that water tank and seeing that water and tasting that cold water. And it's beyond St. Charles. People will tell you about Cold Springs Market, which was a little store between Stone Creek and Pennington, who had this vat out there that the spring water ran through, and they would set watermelons in that spring water to cool them. And in that market, they sold just store goods, but people would go down there and buy their watermelons. And they also had a spring where water would spill out, and people would come and catch their water because they didn't have running water.
Right.
People would go to Cold Spring markets to buy their watermelons because they would drive off somewhere to South Carolina or Georgia and buy watermelons in the summertime. Or they'd tell you about the driftwood. Has anybody said the driftwood to you? Who in here knows what the driftwood is?
Used to be an old bar right there.
No. The driftwood is a little hamburger joint that sold the first soft serve ice cream in a cone. And they'd make parfaits. And that's, you know, that's what St. Charles is. It's not St. Charles.
Right.
It's the Niggerhead Rock. Do you know what the Niggerhead Rock is?
We do, yeah.
That's Stoneface. It ain't Stoneface. It's the Niggerhead Rock. Lee Bank and Trust that was here, their first checks had the Niggerhead Rock on it. It still has Stoneface on their checks, but it didn't say Stoneface. It didn't have just the icon. It had the word Niggerhead on it. Now, do you think you could have that? St. Charles was a grocery store over here owned by the Poes. And they had a butcher in there, Sam Sharp. Who has a butcher? You go down there, even when I come to work in Powell Mountain, and you go in there and say, I want a bologna sandwich. They'd pull out a hunk of bologna and they'd slice you a bologna sandwich. Slice you a big hunk of bologna, make you a bologna sandwich. And we would come from the office up there. The whole office. You're in the middle of nowhere, and the whole office would break, and we'd go in the conference room, and we'd have lunch together. There was my grandfather, Buzz Burden, was known for a storyteller. So the kids would come to his front porch in the coal camp, and he'd make up ghost stories. You know? There was a story that the Democrats won an election up here one year, and some well-known men started setting off dynamite here, and they got a hold of something got a hold of some TNT instead of dynamite, and busted out every window in the whole community down because it's done it down here on the ballpark.
Yeah, we read about that. That's
Yeah.
a good story.
And we heard about it in another interview the other night.
There was another little gentleman here who was married to Leela Britt, who run a restaurant in town, and they called him George Washington. You ever heard of George Washington? Little man George Washington. He was
No.
Well, they'd call him a homeless person somewhere else, or an erratic. His name was George. They called him George Washington, and he was a little character, a little man, might have weighed 90 pounds, soaking wet. And he hung around the town, and people gave him a handful of change.
Take your map if you want to.
No, those maps are yours. You take them.
Okay.
All righty? I'll see you next week, Charlie. Well, George Washington, he'd hang around the town. People give him change and stuff. Me and my buddy would ride to work together. We come up to work one morning. It was pretty cold one fall morning, and there used to be some dumpsters that set up here across the railroad tracks, and we stopped to throw his trash in the dumpster one morning. And he hopped out and started to toss that bag of trash in the dumpster, and I heard somebody scream. It was my buddy. George had jumped over and fell into the dumpster and been there all night. So just as my buddy got ready to throw the garbage in there, George popped up and said, "Hey, buddy, help me on this dumpster."
That's funny. Well, you have any more questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay, well, we certainly,
pretty much
we
covered-
certainly appreciate your time.
Yes.
And you've answered a lot of questions, and your stories will be useful to us.
Now there's also Indians. We uncovered an Indian burial ground up on top of the mountain, and by accident we started to put in a exploration well. So the Indians, the American Indians, are here too. They were putting in a road for an exploration well and disturbed what we found out to be an Indian burial ground on top of the mountain, and stopped, relocated our well. So there's evidence of Indians being here. But I thank you, young people.
Well,
for
we
the
thank
interest in
you
St. Charles.
so
It's
much.
it's a dying town.
And that's the reason we're here, to preserve these stories. And
Hi, I'm Christy Adams, and I'm with the Appalachian Studies class, and we're here interviewing people in St. Charles to learn about the history of the place and about the mines. I'm really enjoying it, learning about the past, and I find it very important, just simply because these are things that needs to be remembered, and that, you know, someday that these people are not going to be here and their stories may be forgotten. But by doing this, we're going to be able to have them archived at the UVA Wise campus, and they will be remembered always.
I'm Katie Holman. We are here with our Appalachian Studies class. We are studying this town of St. Charles, and we're just gathering up a history of everything that's happened in the town since they were a popular coal mining area and everything after that.
Hi, I'm Joey DeWine. I'm with my class, Appalachian Studies, to learn more about the area of St. Charles, and we're learning an awful lot about just what life was like back here when this town was booming back in like the 40s, and it's just a really good experience to have.
No, okay. And my name is Christy,
and I'm Connie Little. And your name is Miss Jenny Coleman?
Virginia Coleman.
Virginia
Coleman.
All right. So where were you born?
I was born in Osage, Virginia,
Okay.
1928, October the 19th, 1928.
Okay. And did you live in St. Charles? You said y'all moved.
We moved here in 1935
Okay.
at Mayflower.
At Mayflower. Okay. And how long did you live up in Mayflower?
About 5 years.
Okay. And did you live in a company house up there?
Yeah, we lived in a 4-room house.
You did?
We lived there during the Depression.
Okay. Okay. And now how many brothers and sisters did you have when you lived
I
there?
had 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Okay. In the 4-room house. And did your daddy work in the mines?
Huh?
Did your daddy work in the mines there? Up
Yeah.
there? Okay.
If you didn't work in the mines, you didn't live up there.
Right. Okay. And you said that y'all, of course, the kids played out, and you said, did you go in and explore the mines or help or anything like that?
Well, see, my dad worked in the mines got a job up there at Mayflower and went to work up there, and then he got hurt. And when he got hurt, we had to move. You have to move And then they made a little school up there, 4 rooms. We went to school up there at Mayflower. And then there was a school at Bonnie Blue, a bigger school.
Okay.
We never went there.
And after your daddy got hurt, where did y'all move to?
We moved to Kingsport
Kingsport. Okay. Okay.
for about 2 years.
Okay. And then did you move back here to the area?
Then we moved back to Virginia Lake
Virginia. Okay. And did he get a job
at
in those
Monarch.
mines? At Monarch. Okay. All right.
What did your mommy do while your daddy?
Done the cooking, the washing, and she had to wash on the board. And we got fried potatoes, soup beans, and we thought that was one of them miracles if you got that, you know.
Yeah.
So you didn't have them very often. That was kind of a special treat when you was able to get soup beans and fried taters.
Oh, that was so good.
So did you have like a farm or anything, farmland or anything like that?
We never had nothing like that.
Did you buy everything at the company store?
It's a commissary.
Commissary, that's right. That's right.
We go down, Mommy would get $1 a day, you know. She had a script card.
Yeah.
And she got $1 a day. And somehow or other, she said, get me a big can of kraut. I mean, you know, I don't know how come, because the commissary had everything, but if you only got $1, you could buy what, you know, what you could get with $1.
Right, you had to be careful with it, didn't
Yeah.
you?
And Daddy, when he worked in the mines, he'd go 4 o'clock in the morning. And when he come home, he would be so dirty and he would be so tired that he would lay down in the floor. And he was so tired. Not like it is today.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, whenever there wasn't no union during that time, was there? But was there like a lot of strikes or anything that was going on that you heard of, or no strikes?
Was there any violence that went on? Any
No.
disasters or meanness or?
Sometimes I can't hear.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Was there any like meanness or violence or anything?
No.
Nothing.
Tell you, when we come out, and they was like at about every third house, there was a spigot where you could go out and get your water, and then they had the outside toilets.
Yeah. So you all lived in company housing and everything like that?
Up there we did, yeah. No, we lived at Virginia Lake. We had to pay rent.
Okay.
Okay. Is that when he worked for Monarch that y'all had to pay rent?
No, what?
When your daddy worked for Monarch? y'all had to pay rent, or was it coming
Yeah,
out?
well, it come out of your pay.
Oh, okay.
And when we lived up there, we didn't have no coal or anything, and Mom and Dad would come home. We'd stay in the bed, and Mom and Dad would come home, and I'd go up the road, pick up coal, come back, cook. We didn't live up there too long till we moved to Big Branch.
Oh, okay.
That's right down the road there.
Okay.
My brother was born up there.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you about the medical doctor. Like, was there a doctor in the company town?
At Mayflower. When me and Faye, can I say this? When me and Faye we was just, she was 5, I was 7. We'd go down to the commissary and we would ride the man car. That was to take Dad and them to work. And we'd get on there and we'd run down to the commissary, and Jake Smith worked there as a butcher, and he'd get after us because we had blonde hair, you know, and everything. Then we would go hunt the doctor because Mommy was going to have a baby, and his name was Dr. Henderson and Dr. Grigsby. And he'd say, now, got your baby right here in this little black bag. And we did think that.
That is sweet.
We did think that, you know. But we'd hunt him up every time we went down there to see what he was going to say to us, you know, and everything. So, but that's at Mayflower. But then we moved to Big Branch. And my brother was born up there. We'd go blackberry pick, and we're not the ones that had any money. We go blackberry picking, you know, get stone bruises and not wearing no shoes. and chiggers. We got chiggers and everything. But we didn't live up there too long, and we moved to Pennington. Stayed down there about a year and went to school down there. Me and Faye did. And then we moved up to Graveyard Hill. And Mommy didn't like living there, so we moved to the big house. Is it okay if I call it the big house?
Yes.
The one right down the road here?
Well, that's the big house.
Okay.
We played in the creek. We done everything they was to do. We like being outside, you know, and everything. And then then me and Faye, we got married, and we had kids of our own. And but my brother, Ronnie, he was born in the big house. He was the first one. We only lived in 3 rooms. He was the one that was born the first. He's born in 1943. And then my baby brother was born there too, and we was just in 3 rooms, but it was like a big house. I mean, you know, we call it a big house. They said you ain't supposed to, and I said, well, it's our house. And then we graduated from that 3 rooms upstairs.
Okay.
With moving on up.
That's right.
And we moved on up, and we lived there till my kids was born. They all 4 of them was born in the big house.
Okay.
And Mommy would wash on the board. She had, and she never got a washing machine till Gary was about first born, and a little refrigerator. But she liked the 3 rooms because it had water in it. And so we lived there till later on we had to move again. We moved over on Graveyard Hill. And then we moved back to the big house.
Okay.
We lived in it several years, you know, and everything. And then, but Mommy would, she said one morning, I don't have any flour. I'll make us some cornmeal gravy. And you know, that was so good. Now I do the same thing and everything. But I said, we had lived here, and I love it. And I don't go away and say anything or anything like that. But I wrote a letter to Santa Claus. Shirley Temple was born the same time I was, and they come out with a doll. But Mama couldn't get us no doll, because we just got a little doll and a poke. The miners give us pokes, and we'd get an apple and orange. We never got anything like that till it was Christmas time, and we just we believed Santa Claus was, and so I wrote this letter, and I told Santa Claus, I said, Santa Claus, I believe that was one of the best Christmases I ever had, and he gave me all that stuff, and everything, but we was poor, and me and Faye, our aunt, she gave us clothes to wear, and her hair wasn't curly. As you see, it ain't curly now, but we was made fun of. I mean, kind of, but we didn't care. For some reason, we did not care about what, Mommy had to do, like she had to get up, and I've seen her wash on the board and her hands would just bleed and everything, and but I seen it easier when my kids was born. I said I went to the Goodwill store and I got them some clothes, and stuff like that, and then for Easter they loved that. They got some jelly beans, and stuff, but they never got that much. And they will tell you right today that they loved every minute of it. That boy of mine, wherever he is, I said, do you ever remember getting anything much for Christmas? He said, yes, I do. He said, I remember, and but I got married and it didn't work, so I had to move back in with Mommy, and I had a hard time. And I told myself several times, I said, you know what, I don't regret a minute of it. I don't regret 1 minute of living here or anything. I think it's the grandest place I've ever been. They won't let me be buried here, though. I got to go to Lee Memorial Gardens. They said I couldn't. I said, you could just stand me up anywhere. Oh, is that it? You can say that. But my kids and at Easter time, and they roamed. Me and my sister roamed all over Mayflower, so we know everything about Mayflower. And see, I told you, I would be from one spot.
You are doing great.
I am.
You're doing wonderful.
Well, anyway, I took care of my kids. I mean, I didn't get much. But I think where love is, I always took care of them, sent them to school, That's the way Mommy did us. Mommy sent us to school, and I didn't graduate. My sister didn't, but the rest of them did. They graduated over here at the school, and they went to church over there at the Church of God, and or wherever Bible school was going on, that's where they went, And I raised them as good as I know how. I mean, I told them the things that I knew, how I was raised, how Mommy took care of us. I told them all of this stuff, and they never departed from it, because now 2 times a year we get together and we talk about all the good times, and all this stuff, and Jerry right now, he says the old big house where it was upstairs and where we thought we was moving on up that way. He said, I can tell you every place in that house. I can too, I could go through it. But then we said we was going to have to move. They was going to tear it down, and we was going to have to move, and we was going to have to move to Wagnertown. So I told the kids, I said, let's say goodbye to the old house, because I said we're going to have to move. It's never been the same or anything like that, but we had so many neighbors, and they was so good to us. If Mommy didn't have anything, you could go over here, and they'd let you borrow or give it to you, or sometimes Mommy didn't have the money, and she would have to borrow some, you know, but still, I wouldn't go back to. And when my kids comes up for Sunday dinner, they want to watch TV, but I don't want to, and so I get me a chair and I come in and I say, now let me tell you about Grandma. I said, she lived in Duffield. And I said, finally they leave. I wore out my welcome, you know, and everything like that. But
No.
I went to church for all of my life, and I still go. I get up in the morning, I cook my dinner, and I ain't done none of that, have I?
Oh yeah, you have. I was
Yes,
just looking to see if I need to ask you any other questions.
I told you.
No,
Yeah,
you're doing
I said
great.
I would be here, I would be at Bonneville, but I never wanted to be nowhere but here.
Right.
This is my place, and my kids and me. Of course, I did lose a daughter 4 years ago,
I'm sorry.
and I said, well, I probably won't never be the same, but I took care of them best I know how, I'm just one of them that I don't know what you call me. You call me anything else, or well, is there anything else you want?
When you lived, like when you were younger, and when y'all were living all around here, what was the transportation? Did you take a bus?
Well,
or did you
none of us
have a
drove.
car? Okay.
I never drove, and I thought where the jail is.
Mhm.
Mommy was going to learn how to drive, and Daddy was going to learn her how. And she was going into jail, and he put his foot on hers, and she said, "Never again." and one time he bought her a dress, and it was $1.98, and she said, "I wouldn't wear that to a dog fight." He said, "No, and you'll never get another one." She said, I gotta quit.
No, you don't. We love it.
Yes, we are.
Now, when you got older, you talk a lot about your mommy. Did your daddy pass away, or was it in the mines? Or?
He's been dead several years. I can't remember who. He passed away like on Christmas, Christmas Day.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Mommy, we just went in and she was asleep. I mean, she had just went to sleep.
Okay.
Oh, we're sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, as I said, they taught me everything. Grandma taught us everything. That's why I wanted my kids to know
Exactly.
her. And to know, well, my kids know my grandma Neely and my grandpa was a section foreman over here in St. Charles.
He was?
Yeah, but they lived in Eastone.
Okay. So they didn't live in the campaign. Did he drive to work, your grandpa?
No, he worked on the train. My
he did.
my
Okay.
grandpa
Okay.
did, yeah. And they had, I wrote it in the book about all of the things I remembered about her, and what she let us do and stuff like that. But as I said, I wouldn't trade nothing. I go back and I think of everything that I've ever done, or the good times I've had, and all this. Of course, I've cried a lot.
Well, that ain't nothing wrong with that. No.
Yeah, I said I've cried a lot, but it's not. It's when you lose, and she lived in Bulls Gap, and she got real sick, and you know what? When one of us hurts, my brothers and sisters is right here. They know we're sick. They're here.
That's a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah. And when we get together, we go over to the youth center or to the ballpark. My brother, he's always right there to, he does the good things, you know, and well, we just, and if I say it's time for the reunion, they know it's time for them to go. We get together like that, and we listen to what they say, you know, and everything like that, because we are supposed to. I mean, that's our people and stuff like that. We're supposed to. But I don't think, I hope I don't have many enemies, but I might have some.
You do. I'd say you don't at all.
You don't pass me as a type that would have a single one.
I said, you know what, every year, you know, it's the same thing, but if you are, I've never had much. I mean, I like what I got, but I don't have a lot of stuff. I mean, you know, I don't have many clothes or anything, but I just put it on, go on church, they don't care. It's probably what I wear tomorrow. But I don't have that much, and I don't care.
You know what? I don't think God even looks at that.
And you know, as I said, Shirley Temple died. But, you know, I kind of felt like I knew her because she was born in 1928 and I was too, you know, and I said, I felt like I might know who she was, but I didn't.
Well, but it seemed like it to you. Speaking of church, will you tell us a little bit about the sycamore tree? Because you were showing it here in the picture.
That church, there ain't no church there.
Didn't everybody meet at the sycamore tree and
Let me see it.
do the church stuff? Or the preachers would
That ain't
meet
no
out
church.
there? That's not, but did the preachers meet around the sycamore tree? And
That right there is after where the taxi park was, right out there.
Okay.
And this is right where the sycamore tree is, right there.
Okay, yes.
And this is the mall.
Yeah.
This is the theater. If you had 15 cents, you could go to the movies. Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, you know, and that's our favorite. And this was the hotel.
Yes.
Right there. I've been in it before.
You have?
And don't leave out the St. Charles Midget.
Okay.
That's cool.
How'd they get that name?
Mike,
How'd they get that name, the midgets?
it's St. Charles Midget. That's our.
Okay.
Can I say? On Saturday morning was a big time right out there. The preacher St. John, he was a preacher over there. He would go out and he made snowballs, and they had a recipe that they didn't let nobody have of fried pies. They sold fried pies. And then there would be a preacher out there preaching, you know, but that was a big day. The ball games, we had big ball games, you know, and stuff like that at the ballpark down there.
Yeah.
I quit.
Okay, that's fine. You've done a great job, and we thank you.
We really thank you, and it's been a pleasure, and you've been wonderful.
Hey, you know what? I just think not credit, nothing like that. I don't know what kind. I ain't gonna say what kind of person I am because I don't know. I said sometimes I wonder what kind of a person, but I just am me.
That's
I
right.
know. But anyway, at the end of the story, we live in Wagner Town.
And we're happy.
Uh-huh.
Do you still live in Wagner Town?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll be there till they take me off and over at Lee Memorial Gardens.
Well, there you go.
Well, thank you so much.